Have a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tokimaru and I'm here to have a look at this game. So this is a little series that I've been wanting to do for quite a while. If you watch me, you may know that I usually live stream here on YouTube, and I like to play a variety of different kinds of indie games, for the most part. Obviously, I like big AAA titles and all that, but I like to put a sort of, not really put a spotlight, but I feel like a lot of people tend to avoid playing indie games, and I think that's a real shame because it leads to a lot of gems that end up being overlooked because not that many people are covering them. So I've been wanting to do this small series called Have a Look At, where I give sort of a, not really a review, more of just a first impressions type of thing of sort of various different kinds of indie games that I just think are interesting. Just things that I think are interesting and might be worth taking a look at. They might be good, they might be bad. We don't know until we see, but this is something I've been wanting to do. So we are starting off with a game called Ooh, spelled O-O-O, but the first one has like a little umlaut on top of it. This is a 2D puzzle platformer, Metroidvania, and I'll explain that in a second. By an indie developer by the name of Nama Takahashi, who previously, for the most part, they've only published little experiments for game jams and stuff. But their 3 officially published games are Batloon, which is a 4-player party game, and Electhead, which is sort of similar to this. It's a 2D puzzle platformer with a lot of the same sort of design goals as this game. And then there's Ooh, which is this one, which I'm coming to you now with. This game is, first of all, I'll say right off the bat, when I was looking at their website, I found that they prefer you to encourage people to play the game first before watching a playthrough. So if within a couple of minutes you find yourself enamored by this game, I do highly recommend checking it out. I will try not to spoil much because I think that in this game, the experience of learning and discovering the game mechanics completely blind is a very, very important part of the game. I think it's number one most important thing coming into this game is going into it as blind as possible and figuring everything out for yourself. So I am going to start by jumping into the game, and then I'm going to do what I usually do off stream. This is a cute little way to introduce you to the controls. I usually do this off stream, but now, since we're doing like a little first impressions thing, I feel like it's important to take a look at the menu first and foremost, because I think menu, like what options you have in a menu, sometimes end up getting overlooked. And I think there are a lot of important things that need to be in a menu that some games simply don't have. So first of all, this is a very cute menu. I love I sort of have a love-hate relationship with it. I love the simplicity of not having any descriptions. However, it does lead to a little bit of confusion in some places where you don't really know what a thing is going to do until you test it out. And I can't do that with it. So this one it changes the size of the screen. It expands it to full. I'm not gonna do that right now because it's going to ruin the recording. But with something like this, it's like, what does this mean? Apparently it means screen shake, it turns out. And then we have like a little CRT filter, which is nice for like I don't know if I would call this a retro game. It sort of has a retro aesthetic, but it's definitely not a retro art style. Then moving down, so this is another small thing I had a problem with. It's not too big of a deal because the controls of this game are really simple. First of all, we have the basic mouse and keyboard controls. You can have multiple control sets. These are fully rebindable. However, so first of all, that's actually really good. However, my problem is when we go down to the controller settings, you can't actually rebind the controller buttons, which I don't see why you can't rebind the buttons. Like, you can already rebind the keys, and I'm trying to like move it around so I can I'm trying to move the cursor so I can actually change the keys. It doesn't work. I've also tested it with controller. That also doesn't work. I don't know, for some reason you just can't rebind controller buttons, and I think that's unfortunate because that's like a really small thing they could add. And here, this is actually kind of a confusing screen. Obviously, this is a speedrun timer, but without descriptions, it's like, what does this mean? And I'll show you in a bit when we get into the game. This is something that you won't realize until you start the game. This is obviously a delete file. But yeah, that's the thing that annoyed me, is that like things don't have descriptions. I think it would be very easy to do. To put little one-word descriptions, I think it's probably because this is a single person development team and they're Japanese, but their website, they have like an English version of their website. So I don't see why they wouldn't be able to put English descriptions or like other language descriptions. This is sort of a credit screen. Some of them I actually don't understand. So like, obviously this is Nama Takahashi, the main developer. We have the artist Hachino Tsuyomi does the music. I don't know what this means. So like I said, small descriptions, don't know what this means. This is actually all the inspirations, which is a really cool thing. Obviously we have things like Metroid, Yoshi's Island, Celeste. They're all, it's going to become very apparent why some of these are the inspiration. I don't know what this means. I don't know what a heart means. I don't know what controller means, but yeah. That's like the main issue, the main two issues, or I guess the only two issues, because you don't really need much for a 2D game. So I'm not peeved that it doesn't have that many options. It's just that you really should have rebindable controller keys, and also at the bare minimum, very short descriptions. But other than that, it's totally fine. So we are playing as the Steam page describes it, a bomb caterpillar. And you may notice this caterpillar is lacking in a few features. Number one, an entire body. And number two, bombs. We don't appear to have any bombs on us. But the main gist of the story of this game, not that the story is like, it's not a complex story. There's like barely any story. But we are a caterpillar that has woken up and has been eaten by a bird. That's about it. We've woken up, we wanted to eat a fruit, and we've been eaten by a bird. Now, here's one of the cool things about the overall aesthetic of this game, is that it takes place entirely within a bird. The entire map of this game is inside of a bird, and your goal, I always loved how the eye moves to follow you. Your goal is to escape the bird. That's it. That's the entire story. You've been eaten. Your goal is to escape the bird. Now, like I said, I'm going to try not to play too far into the game because I think it's very important not to spoil the whole experience. However, there is going to be a little bit of gameplay just so I can show off what the general game is so you can get the gist of it before you decide whether or not you're interested. So once we go over here and grab this fruit, oh, I love how wide he is. Now we've gained one segment in our caterpillar body, and you may notice in the background where it once said O, it now says OO with two O's. And it brings back our control menu. This is like, I'm pretty sure this is like the only tutorializing. This and the beginning of the game are the only tutorializing in the entire game. The only clear tutorializing, at least, because I think what this game does a really, really good job of is sort of forcing you to learn things on your own and tutorializing through world design. So we have our left click, which allows us to place a bomb. If we don't have a bomb, we can no longer place one, and right click, which explodes the bomb. That's about it. And when you explode a bomb, it causes your bomb caterpillar to be moved. And that's the entire game. Like I said before, the title has a very specific reason for being that way. If you have noticed the reason why, you may think to yourself that it's possible we may get a second bomb, so it becomes 3 O's. But yeah, that's the entirety of the game. And like I said, this is a Metroidvania, and I did forget to explain that. So a Metroidvania, as opposed to a Metroidvania, is a game where instead of going around and finding items and abilities that help you unlock new areas and then backtracking to unlock those, the point of this game is that you're going around and gaining knowledge. We don't get any abilities aside from this bomb, and then eventually we get a second bomb. We learn how to utilize our bombs in different ways. Because so far, it seems like the only thing we can do is place a bomb and then make it explode. And there are like very, very, very few ways we can actually utilize this. However, the game is far more complex than it seems. So we'll go through here. Oh, how do we get over this? Well, if we noticed before, we can launch ourselves upward, but we can also launch ourselves sideways. Isn't that amazing? So like I said, this game contains no blatant tutorializing outside of the 2 times it shows you the controls. And everything in this game is built to sort of force you to learn how things work through these sort of small puzzles. A cute detail that I liked about this is, let me see if I can do it again. Let me see if I can die. A cute detail is when you grab these little flies, it actually changes the background music to have a little fly buzz in addition to the regular instruments, which is really cute. And every area in this game has like its own instrumental following the same leitmotifs, and they all have their own little bug buzz sound to go with them. But yeah, that's pretty much the entirety of the game. And what I think is really, it's very hard. It's very hard to try and describe all the good things about this. Basically, what ends up happening in this game is you're brought down these really long paths. Let me see if I can get to a map room. So far we don't actually have control of a map yet, but we will in a second, I think. And then I can sort of talk about the overall structure of the game. Oh, this is actually a cool sort of tutorializing thing. You're led to a dead end. So this is what I was talking about, where they sort of force you to learn. You're basically led to this dead end where it's impossible to do anything else. You can't backtrack, you can't progress. So you're forced to learn that bombs can uncover hidden walls. First and foremost, they force you to learn that. And they actually do a really good job at reinforcing what appears like it might be a hidden wall. So like a problem that I think some people have had with previous Metroid games is that some of them ended up turning into, oh, you have to bomb every wall. And there isn't really a way to tell whether or not a wall is bombable. And that's not always true. But sometimes they just have a bombable wall where there's no way to discern whether or not it's bombable. I think this game does a really, really good job at making sure bombable walls are almost always clearly marked. And you end up learning sort of different ways to tell whether or not a wall is bombable. Sorry, excuse me. You learn a few different ways to tell, and they sort of stick to those couple of ways. So even though these appear like they might be bombable, they make sure to tell you that not every indentation is going to be a bombable wall. It's going to be much more obvious than that. There are also a couple different ways. Shoot. I still need to get to... I think it's not going to be for another couple rooms. A map room. There we go. I believe this isn't a bombable wall either. Oh, yes, okay. So this is actually another really cool moment where they basically locked you in here. So you need to try and find a fly. Oh, yeah, I forgot about this. And there's no way for you to put a bomb here, so you can't actually backtrack, which means you're forced to learn. You're forced into this one room. They do this a lot, where you're forced into 1 or 2 rooms where the solution to the puzzle must be. So you have to solve it before moving on. What a lot of games can sometimes do, a lot of puzzle games where there are multiple screens sometimes do, is they don't really lock you in. So you end up sometimes wandering around and backtracking without knowing where the solution to the puzzle could possibly be. And this game does this really well, where they sort of lock you into one room. So this is literally the only other place I can go. This is also where they teach you that flies get eaten by checkpoints. And we will see that there's a reason for that in a bit. Okay, here we go. So this is the map room. Okay, so basically so far it's been pretty linear. It's been pretty linear with only a couple of branches that we actually haven't been able to do anything about because, like I said, we don't have the tools for it, and the tools is just knowledge. And we literally haven't learned anything aside for a couple things. So this game isn't exactly sort of formatted like a complex Metroidvania like Hollow Knight or anything. It's a lot of what this game is it brings you to an area where it branches off into like 1, 2, or maybe 3 different paths. And then you go all the way down to the end of it. And along the way, you're learning new ways to solve puzzles, and they iterate on those a few times, and then they bring you to a dead end, and you have to be like, oh my God, when I learned this new puzzle mechanic, I remembered this thing I saw all the way back in a previous room, and now I know that I've been able to do that the whole time. And that's basically what this whole game is. It's a lot cooler than it sounds because it makes you simultaneously feel completely baffled and stupefied, and also like an absolute genius. Like when you realize the solution to a puzzle that you encountered earlier and that you have been able to solve it the whole time, if only you thought about that one thing. It makes you feel dumb, but also when you realize the solution to some puzzles, it makes you feel like an absolute genius. I'm trying to remember which way was the correct way I needed to go here. So this is what I was talking about, where they usually give you like a little branching path. Okay, so this is one end of the branch where I need a fly. And so far, I can't get one because that doesn't appear to be a bumble wall. This doesn't appear to be a bumble wall. However, since I know that there's a fly here, and I can't get a fly from over here because there's a checkpoint right above this that eats it, the solution to the puzzle must be in this room. Therefore, this must be a secret wall. Isn't that amazing? Again, locking the doors to make sure you're stuck and able to solve the puzzle by yourself. Let me see. There we go. Nice. Now, I might actually stop progressing in a little bit because, like I said, it's really important. Oh yes, now I remember. I think it's really, really important that people go into this game and figure out the solutions to puzzles on their own without me spoiling anything for them, because that's a really important part of the experience. And like I said, it's really difficult for me to sort of describe what I think is amazing about this game without spoiling anything for you. Because there are some really cool parts that I think could sell people on the game, but if I told you about it, then it would completely ruin the surprise. Because there are just reiterating on this sort of like, it forces you to solve a puzzle. There are so many moments when the general design of a room. So there are moments in the game where it basically leads you to a dead end. And then in order to escape it, you're forced to do one specific thing that you don't really think about. Like, you're forced to do one specific thing that you don't really think about, and if you play this game, you might figure out where this is going. In order to reach basically what is one of these map checkpoints, and it leads you to discovering a completely new mechanic that you never thought about before, but then you immediately realize all the different places where it could be used, and it's an amazing feeling when you get there. That's pretty much the entirety of this game is. It gives you an amazing feeling when you realize that you can solve a puzzle. Now, I've said a lot about how much I adore the overall design of this game. I do have a few small problems with it. So I'm gonna try not to spoil exactly how you get here, but there are a few secret rooms. There are some secret rooms that are... I think I don't want to be here right now. There are a few secret rooms. Close your eyes, I'm gonna solve this puzzle. Wait, Wait, what am I doing? Oh, yes. There are a few secret rooms in this game. And when I initially played this game and I got to a certain point in it, I tried something that I thought would work, but not... Ignore that. But not for the reasons that I should have. So yeah, there's a fly down there. Like I said, it basically locks you into this room, so you're forced to find that there are secret walls here because there's a flag up here which locks you into this room. What was I saying? I had a point that I was gonna make. So there are these secret rooms. One sec. I'm waiting for the wall to reappear so I can blow up this bomb, because otherwise the wall stays above me and then I get trapped down there and I have to die. So there are these secret rooms in the game where I accidentally figured out how to get to them before they introduced to me how, because there's like a very specific moment near the end of the game where if you're diligent in looking for secrets, then you'll immediately find it. And it'll sort of recontextualize the whole game for you, and you'll immediately know where all these secret rooms are. Let me go back to another point. Let me just stand over here for a while. And I didn't get to that point, but based on something I discovered halfway through the game, I accidentally found out how to get to these secret rooms. It's not that big of an issue. But, so these secret rooms, they end up being these extremely difficult puzzles. They're like hyper difficult puzzles compared to everything you find in this game. And it does get pretty difficult later on. Like, later parts of this game get pretty difficult and take a while for you to actually complete them, but they're not too bad. I think everybody that has an interest in puzzle solving games can complete the puzzles. The secret rooms are extremely tough, and there are a couple that were impossible for me to figure out. And the problem, it's not necessarily, my problem isn't necessarily that I couldn't figure them out. It's that I couldn't figure them out because the way to solve them relied on sort of esoteric game mechanics that they don't teach you. So remember how I said the entirety of this game is basically soft teaching you through forcing you to solve the puzzle in ways that teach you brand new mechanics of the game. The mechanics that you're required to figure out in order to solve a couple of the secret room puzzles, there's literally no way you would ever think to do them. Like, they don't teach you, they don't hint them at you, there's no way for you to figure them out. I had to look a couple of them up. Most of them I completed on my own, but there were like 3 or 4 of them that were extremely esoteric. And that is one problem I have. They are optional. All secrets in this game are optional, because I believe the only achievements in this game, not that achievements are mandatory, but if you care about completion, then maybe you only care about achievements. But the only achievements in this game, I believe, are for reaching specific areas. So all of the secret areas are optional. However, it is kind of annoying to go through all of them and find a couple that you never would have thought of the solution because it's a weird game mechanic that's like janky physics that there's no way for you to have predicted could be the answer. But since they're optional, it's not too big of an issue. It's not too big of an issue. Another issue that I have that's also not too big of an issue, but it does get annoying from time to time, is that there's actually no mouse constraint on the screen. So regardless of whether the game is running on full screen or windowed mode, there's no mouse constraint. So occasionally you'll find yourself, even though you don't need to move the mouse for this game. Whoops, that's my bad. You don't need to move the mouse around the screen for this game, but you do need to left click and right click. So obviously you're gonna have your hand on your mouse. And occasionally you'll sort of drift your mouse to the side of the screen and you end up clicking off of it and it just gets really annoying from time to time. It's not too bad because controller is also an option, except they don't let you rebind the controller. You can rebind the controller, and also there's no mouse constraints for the window. So that was another small problem I had. Again, not too big of an issue. It's not something that ruins the game for you, but it's something that you might find annoying from time to time. And number 3, I think this is something very divisive because in the current economic climate and with the overall just sort of atmosphere of gaming as of Year of Our Lord 2025, this game is pretty short, and I believe it costs $10. I believe it's $10 USD. Let me check if I've got that right. Yes, $10 USD. And it's pretty short. It's about 2.5 hours to complete the game. I found that beating the game took about 2.5 hours, and then 100%ing the game, including all of the secret rooms and everything, took about 3.5 hours. And that's, for the most part, that's just one. You can sit down for one gameplay session, one, maybe two, for 2.5 to 3.5-ish hours for $10. And I think that some people, personally, okay, I would like to say that I firmly believe that this is 100% worth $10. This is 100% worth the price of admission. Some people might find 2.5 to 3 hours to be too short. And even though I don't think $10 is too much to ask for a game like this, but I think a lot of people would think that 2.5 hours is too short for the asking price for a game like this. But personally, I firmly believe that I would rather have an incredibly well-designed, dense, tightly packed experience like this for $10 than like something with very little strategic or emotional depth that lasts like 5+ hours. I would rather have an extremely short but extremely well-designed game like this for $10. But I know that for some people that's a bit too much to ask just for the length of time this game is. So that is, I wouldn't say it's a problem, but I think it's an issue that some people might have. However, I promise to you that this is an extremely dense 2.5 hour experience, and I think that if you play this from start to finish without getting spoiled on anything, you'll be extremely satisfied by the end. That's just my opinion. And other than that, I don't think there's much more to say about this game, especially because I'm trying to keep it spoiler free. So yeah. Ooh, an extremely short, not extremely short, it's lengthy enough. 2D puzzle platformer Metroid Brainia. It's available on Steam for $9.99 USD or your regional equivalent. I believe it's also on itch.io, but that I might be wrong about that. Let me check. No, it's only on Steam. I think a couple of their other games are on itch.io. But yeah, that's going to be everything for today. Thank you very much for watching. I have been Tokimaru, and I will see you all next time.